right, we are going to get started. Buckle your seatbelts. We got a big announcement from the NEA this week. So let's dig in. So welcome. This is Mass Creative's virtual policy and action update for June 25th. It is good to be here with all of you in community. So let's get right to it. So the National Endowment for the Arts this week announced their recovery grants, their organizational recovery grants. And if you'll remember, as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, 135 million was allocated to the National Endowment for the Arts. 40% of that was sent directly to states, jurisdictional, and regional arts agencies and arts organizations for distribution. So Mass Cultural Council and the New England Foundation for the Arts both received money from that 40% amount, and then 60% went to the NEA. So the NEA announced that they are doing their American Rescue Plan grants, and these grants are to nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit organizations are arts and cultural organizations, local arts agencies, and arts service organizations. They are one-time grants. They are operational grants. So that means you don't have to have it for a specific project. It is literally meant to keep your organization going. You can use it for mortgage payments, rent payments. You can use it for payroll. You can use it to bring back people on from payroll or who you've had to furlough. There's no match and there's no cost share requirement. These are going to be sort of set fixed amounts. So you can either apply for $50,000, $100,000, or $150,000. And the big headline here, as you can see, I put it in all caps, is you do not need to be a previous NEA grantee to apply. In fact, they are encouraging first-time applicants to apply this time. They're also encouraging organizations that serve populations that are historically underserved, that are small and medium budget-sized organizations, and are from rural and urban communities. As we're going, you will see the chat is going to light up with a bunch of links that are kind of unpacking the part of the NEA's website that is talking about all of these pieces. I am doing a very quick overview. There's a lot more detail involved, but I want to make sure you all have this information, and frankly, that you are sharing it with your friends and family and your networks and your peers and your professional networks. Okay, so here's the timeline, and this is the best part. So they've broken up the application process into two groups, and it is based on the name of your organization, and you need to go by your legal business name according to what your 501c3 tax IRS filing is. So if you're doing business as the Zenith group, but you're really called About Art, you got to apply as About Art, and you're going to apply in the first line, the first row column here. So you can see they have been really explicit on their website to say that it doesn't matter what your timeline is for applying, you will get the same notification and you will get the same start date to start using those funds. And that it's not a case of they're going to consider the A through L's first and then go to the M through Z's. And if your organization starts with a Z, you're out of luck because they've given away all the money. I think they're just trying to organize these so that they can be as efficient as possible in the reviewing of these applications. They anticipate a lot of applications. So you can see right here, the real difference is there's two parts of the application. The second part is where the difference is. So groups that start with A through L, their second part will be due August 19th through the 25th. And then groups that start with M through Z, their application is going to be August 27th through September 2nd. There's a lot more to eligibility, but here are just sort of the top highlights. You do need to be a nonprofit tax exempt organization. So if you are a 501c4, a 501c6, if you are not a 501 at all, you are not eligible. You need to have completed 3 years of arts programming prior to the application deadline. You have to have submitted, so if you have gotten NEA grants before, you have to have successfully submitted all of your final grant reports before in order to be eligible for this one. So if you are sitting there going, oh, I got that report I got to do it now. There can only be one application for an organization. And so, we're all organized very differently. And some of us have sort of ancillary or sort of, fundraising groups that fundraise for the organization. they can't both apply for the same organization. So I put the example, if a museum applies, the friends of the museum cannot also apply to do that. The other thing that's not included in this slide, but if you have applied for CARES funding from an NEA grant and you've specifically said we're going to use it for these things, you can't apply for this recovery grant and say you're going to use it for those same things. That has to be for separate needs. And then you have to have a DUNS number and you have to be registered with the System for Award Management, SAM. Those two processes are not easy. So if you don't have a DUNS number or you're not registered with SAM, do that now. Part of the shuttered venue operator grant prep was urging all people who were planning on applying, excuse me, my tongue got twisted there, to make sure that you had those two things, because it takes a little bit of time and you really need to make sure you've got that done. So, okay, so that is, sorry, let me go back. So that's what we've got in terms of the National Endowment for the Arts organizational recovery grants. Again, those deadlines are in August, but don't wait on it. Do review all those materials. They have a lot of really great resources on the website that tell you how to apply, and you can take a look there. If we hear of organizations, art service organizations in Massachusetts that are providing support, like application development support, navigation support, we will let you all know. And if you if you hear of them, let us know, and we will share that with our larger membership, right? I think this is a moment where we're, a rising tide lifts all boats. So let's make sure that we can get as many successful applications submitted to the NEA from Massachusetts as possible. All right, so now we're going to move on and talk about state American Rescue Plan Act funding. So last week, Governor Baker very proudly announced a $2.8 billion spending plan for some of the American Rescue Plan Act money that was coming to Massachusetts. And he was very proud of it. He included it as an amendment in a bill that the legislature had sent him. It was sort of a procedural bill that they needed to do in order to move the stimulus money, the American Rescue Plan stimulus money, into the state's bank accounts, basically. And so Baker included this amendment for $2.8 billion of that to spend of the $5.8 billion. Included in it was $100 million for cultural facilities and tourism assets throughout Massachusetts. So on the face of it, yeah, that's great. However, when you dug into it, the $100 million was going to go to the Massachusetts Office of Tourism and Travel. It was not going to go to the Massachusetts Cultural Council, which is frankly the state arts agency and the one that knows our sector best in terms of distributing that money. It also was only allowed, there were two uses for that money. The first one was a marketing campaign, and the second was to add more money to the Cultural Facilities Fund for specific reopening capital expenses related to reopening, which means that if you're an organization that doesn't own a space, that you rent a space, you would not be eligible for any of that money. If you were an individual artist that has lost significant revenue and are trying to figure out how to get your career back on track, or support you, or you weren't eligible for any of that money. And so Mass Creative came out very strongly and said that this is not an appropriate allocation. It's not enough money, and it's not the right use of that money. Which is good to know, but more importantly, the legislature very quickly overrode that amendment and said, we're not going to do that. The House went further in conversation. So Representative Dan Hunt, who is actually the chair of the House's Economic Stimulus Oversight Committee, announced that the House is planning on holding hearings in July after July 4th. Okay. And so their whole thing, the legislature's attitude here is that they are going to make sure that there's a lot of public input. So this is like a little, put this red flag on your calendar for July. There is most likely going to be an opportunity for the creative community to be heard about our needs. And we're probably going to look to ask all of you to either think about submitting written testimony or joining a hearing to talk about what's happened and what you believe is necessary in order to get the creative sector back on track. Okay, the next piece, is This is also another time to remind you that we have given the legislature a vehicle through which they could bring recovery to the cultural community, and it is through the COVID Cultural Recovery Fund, right? And the Commonwealth Cultural Futures Act. We're now up to 58 sponsors. That's great. Our goal is really 80, but I'm feeling really delighted by the fact that we're about to tip into the 50% mark for the Senate, but we can't let up. So if you haven't already, check in with your legislators. If you notice that they haven't co-sponsored, remind them that this is a bill you really, really believe in and you want to see get as many co-sponsors as possible. All right, so in 4 minutes, the COVID-19 Cultural Impact Commission is holding a public hearing. This is an opportunity for the commissioners to hear directly from the sector, again, about what you believe is necessary for recovery for the larger sector, and not just recovery, but growth and stability, right? Mass Creative has a seat on that commission, so I will be there. I promise to be a friendly Zoom square if you're there. The deadline to submit to join for oral testimony to speak directly during the hearing has passed. It was yesterday, was the deadline to sign up, but you can still submit written testimony. And what I would suggest is it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be flowery. It can be one page that basically says, here is what has happened to my organization or to my creative or cultural practice since the public health closures required by COVID-19. Here is what we are looking at in terms of how to rebuild and recover. And this is what we really need in order to be able to do that. And while I certainly would love to see a lot of people mention the Commonwealth Cultural Futures Fund, not just Mass Creative would, right? We recognize that there are a lot of other ideas, and the commission is looking for as many of those ideas as possible. So feel free to include those. You can also join and watch the hearing. We have included the links in the chat. So if you feel so inclined, in 3 minutes, we can all join each other in that space too. Okay. Finally, I want to just talk about some of the work that we're doing in Boston. So Mass Creative is working with a coalition of arts and cultural leaders in Boston on Create the Vote 2021 around the mayoral election. As always, the goals of the Create the Vote effort is about elevating the value of arts and culture during elections to make sure that both candidates and voters understand how important a strong, sustainable, and inclusive arts and cultural community is for our communities across Massachusetts. We want to make sure that the needs of the creative community are considered and talked about. And then we're also looking to develop a stronger voting block for arts and culture. So arts and cultural organizations have mailing lists, right? And those are people who have joined your organization and believe in your work. And they are also people who want to see arts and culture happen across the city, right? So there are ways that we want to animate and mobilize those folks to join us in this work. So some of our activities are, we just recently released a policy platform that was developed in coordination with the coalition. We are holding roundtables with candidates. In fact, we had our first one 2 days ago with John Barrows, former Chief of Economic Development under Mayor Walsh. It was a really great conversation with a cross section of arts and cultural leaders from Boston. We're having our next one next Monday with Councillor Wu. And we've got 2 more scheduled with Representative Santiago and with Councillor Campbell, and are working on our last 2. Then we're also going to develop questionnaires that can be shared, that will be sent to candidates that they can respond to, and then we'll share that with arts voters across the city. We're also going to hold a town hall forum in September where the candidates can talk about their vision for arts and culture. And this is all in the spirit of voter education and mobilization. So we're doing this in Boston. If you are a Boston-based artist or a Boston-based organization, we would love to have you join us in our work. And the first thing you can do is you can endorse the platform. We've included the link to that in the chat. We don't do just this work in Boston, right? This year we are focusing specifically on Boston, but we are looking to expand that work. So if you as a community have an election that's coming up that you're interested in really organizing art supporters into becoming arts voters, give me a holler and we can talk about it. All right, so it is 10 o'clock, so I'm going to finish us up with a reminder. Our work, we have not quit during this whole year and a half with you all. You haven't quit, we haven't quit, and our work continues. And we've got a lot of things that we can still do together. And so I'm just asking for your continued support, either by renewing your organizational membership or consider becoming a monthly donor. Just, what is it? The price of a cup of coffee, which, what is coffee now? $10, $15 for every month. you could make sure that G and Alex and I are able to continue to really focus on making sure that there is strong support for the arts and cultural community across Massachusetts. And we have a little bit of a goal. We're trying to reach $5,000 by June 30th. So we're almost at the end and we could really use your help. That is all from me. We have our next policy and action update on July 9th. I hope you will all join us. I so appreciate all of you being in community this morning. And hopefully I will see you all. I've lost you. I can't see you on the screen. I will see you all in the hearing in 0 minutes. All right, see you later.